Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Scoop World Order. Brian Hartline killing it a little bit more edition, going after the number one receiver in the country. Another one, a phenom. Going to break his tape down a little bit. We got a lot of stuff to get through, a lot of great stuff going on in the recruiting trails. A lot of talk about what's going on in the defensive line room. We're going to talk about all of that. As always, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like. Click subscribe. Also, click that little alert bell. Again, if you guys want to help us out in a huge way, give us a follow on Apple Podcasts. Tonight is the last night of our Scoop merch drop. So rep the Scoop, REPTHESCOOP.com is the last night, midnight. The store closes. I sent out emails. I sent out blasts on BuckeyeScoop.com. I'm telling you guys now, if you guys want that hoodie, that hat, the gear's fire. It's the biggest drop we've ever had by about fivefold. So thank you all. But I appreciate all you guys that are rocking the gear, the flags. We'll go through some of the merch towards the end of the show. But thank you guys. Get in the store, get your gear. I got a bunch of new hoodies coming. I can't wait. So with that being said, we have a 5-star special guest today. Mr. Daniel Sanchez is in the building along with Devin to talk about Pop's podcast, which is going to be on our show 7 o'clock in the primetime spot this Friday. Devin, I'm going to hand it to you first before we hand it off to Daniel. Talk a little bit about the genesis of this. You're going to be running point along with Daniel. Talk about this, and then tell us a little bit about Daniel, and Daniel, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, man, for sure. This is all Daniel here. One of his ideas, bringing this to with college football these days and recruiting. There's so many ins and outs of it. There's so many things us fans don't know. We're very passionate about it, so you'll see us speak up on Twitter and all these other things. And not only that for the fans, but for these players themselves, for the players and their families. If they've never been through this process, they're not really going to know what to do, man. So essentially, I'm just help in this, right? I wanted to help Daniel kind of get this thing off the ground. So I'm here, help the conversation keep going, more of the technical side of it, man. Obviously, I'll let Daniel introduce himself, but I know Buckeye Nation knows who he is, but he's very passionate about the recruiting side of things and how to and how to help these recruits and these families go through it. So Daniel, go ahead and fill us in, man.
Man, just again, I want to thank you guys for having me on. Of course, my name's Daniel Sanchez. My son is currently playing, football at Ohio State right now. It's a freshman, Devin Sanchez, and my partner and I, Duke Pettijohn, kind of came up with this idea, of kind of just wanted to talk, just amongst dads, just our feelings about the recruitment process, what our sons went through, also being dads who kind of went through the process. So, we just kind of wanted to kind of have an outlet to kind of just talk with people, just kind of share our thoughts. And this thing is kind of morphed into something that, is gone a little bit further. We've talked with a few people, we've had a few guests on, more on the personal side, another father, who currently has a child at Ohio State as well. And some other people, who've been, what we feel like are more on the essential side of what is needed, to successfully kind of go down this route, just on the football side. Right. And this Pops Pod thing is, just kind of is what it is, just a couple dads just having conversations, we just, that's really what it is. We're just kind of talking about, our experiences and we'd love to talk with other people about their experiences and just share those things.
Yeah. And go ahead, Dev.
Yeah, Daniel, you mentioned some of these guests that you've brought on. Those have been some of the best shows that we've done. Getting different perspectives. Everybody goes through different things, but I know this Friday we're going kind of another route. We've had parents on the show. We had an NFL agent on the last episode we did. It was a very informational episode where you kind of learned how NIL is operated with the agents and different things like that, and how to navigate that scene successfully. But tell us a little bit about what we got coming this Friday. The episode this Friday got a pretty big time guest coming on that has quite a bit of insight on how recruiting is now and how it's changed over the years.
Yeah, just another great guy. That's one of the biggest things that we kind of preach, when we're not trying to preach on this thing is surrounding yourself with the right people. So we think this is another great person that, I've had the opportunity to be around. I know he's big in the scene, not only in 7-on-7, but, just overall. We're going to have on man, he's my guy. We've got to know Brett personally, and on the professional side. So we're going to have Brett Getz come in this Friday from SFE, South Florida Express, and we're going to talk a little bit of 7-on-7 this weekend. And and just what I mean by that is just how essential is that to an athlete that's kind of coming up in the rankings? When do you want to start these kinds of things? What's the difference between somebody going to the national scene as opposed to your homegrown scene? Just things of that nature, man. So, again, we're going to have on a great guest this weekend and just kind of talk a little bit more about, things that we think are just, just the way to success when it comes to having an athlete.
Yeah, I was going to ask real quick, because again, you've been through it, Daniel, and you've done a tremendous job. Your son was one of the best players in the country. And how important is it to identify people that can help you through the process, like Brett Getz in South Florida Express, like certain NFL agents, as you go through recruiting? Again, a lot of people have reputations. Obviously, you guys selected, Ryan Day, Coach Tim Walton, tremendous people, tremendous culture. How important is it to have some good advocates in your corner that can kind of give you a little bit of counsel? Obviously, you're going to make your own decision. You're your own family. You're your own man, and so is your son. But how important is it to have people that you trust throughout the process? Say, hey, tell me a little bit about what you know about Ryan Day or Tim Walton, on top of what you obviously observe when you're around them.
Man, I think it's real important. You can't ever, have enough people, just to kind of give you advice, their perspective on things. So, I think it's always great to have people, like Brett, who've been around, have dealt with people, you name it, he's done it, he's talked to that person. So I mean, it's just a great thing to be able to have, people like that in your corner, man, to be able to call on, to be able to, just ask just a simple question. I think it's really big.
Yeah, it's amazing hearing the different perspectives of it, man. I'm excited for the show for sure to hear the information that he has about 7-on-7. That's something that really intrigues me. You hear even these national debates all the time about how important it is. Should athletes do it? How much should they
Right.
do it? You know what I mean? And there's all these questions that you hear so many answers for, but it's like, who are these answers coming from? You know what I mean? And it's kind of like hearing from a fan on the recruiting perspective versus hearing from a parent like yourself that's been through it. Well, if you want to know some real answers, the truth about 7-on-7 and all these questions you might hear answered, Brett Getz from SFE, co-founder of SFE, I think the founder of SFE, been in it the whole time and has a heart to help these kids. I got the honor of speaking with him on the phone the other day, and you can hear that in his voice. He keeps talking about just wanting to help these kids, right, do the right thing. So I'm stoked and honored to be a part of it, man. It's going to be a great show. So if you're in the chat listening, man, Friday at 7, get it out there. The feed is on our Twitter already, so go ahead and share that with as many people as you can. If you know a football player or some parents that got some questions, man, about the recruiting process or anything, this is the show to tune into. This is coming from people that don't have an ulterior motive in this other than wanting to get the correct information out to the people that need it. So it's a cool opportunity.
Yeah, Daniel, I know you're on a tight time schedule right here, so we're at 10 minutes, man, and I want to make sure you want to come back, so I'm going to adhere to it. So, but I appreciate you, my man. Do you have any final words as we wrap this thing up and get you ready for Friday?
Man, again, I just want to, extend my gratitude to both you gentlemen, for, Devin, helping us out with this thing numerous times now. We talk all the time about, where we think this thing is going, and yourself, Kirk, for allowing us, your audience, So I mean, man, we're looking forward to keep going with this thing and rocking and rolling, and keep bringing in people, man, and just sharing. That's really what it is, man. I keep saying it. We're just a couple of guys talking, and we want to continue to talk to people, and just hear what they have to say, and what they thought about things. It's really what it's about for us.
I appreciate you so much, brother. You have a great night, and thank you so much. And we'll see you on Friday. It's gonna be great.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my man. We will fade this thing over to me and Dev. All right, Dev. 5-star. The 5 stars are flowing right now. We've got a monster wide receiver, a kid who is a 2027. It's crazy to say that out loud. Brian Hartline is on the warpath like usual. Monshon Sales, 6'5" kid from a powerhouse in Indiana, not South Florida for once. So, what do you know about him? I'm going to click his film on real quick. He is a massive dude. Might be a little bigger than JJ. Really, really good player. What are your thoughts on the offer? Because to me, I feel like a kid from Indiana, Brian Hartline, top of the leaderboard. I mean, he's going to be a Buckeye. What are we talking about? But what are your thoughts on Monshon Sales?
I've heard his name, for the past year or so brought up, never really dug into his film like a lot yet or anything. But first thing that stands out, big body receiver, 2027 class. Some sites have him at 6'5", some at 6'3". So we're going to go with 6'4", 195 pounds, big body receiver. You look at the Jeremiah Smith, you look at the Quincy Porter, you look at the Chris Henry Jr., you're starting to see a type of receiver that Brian Hartline likes to go after. And here recently, I've had the opportunity to, talk with some big time receivers and some big time parents of those big time receivers and really get an insight on what it means to be recruited as a receiver by Brian Hartline, right? And the fact of the matter is, here's the truth. If you're a big time receiver that want to play in college football and Brian Hartline offers you, if you have the correct support around you and you have the right mentality, and you might say, what is the right mentality? Well, the right mentality is just straightforward. The money will come, right? Don't go after that bag out front. The money's going to come. If you get offered by Brian Hartline, right, and you want to do this thing and you want to go play in the NFL, you are going to take that offer. So to see Brian Hartline get in so early on such a good receiver, it just goes to show you, Brian Hartline and what he's doing with this receiver room is kind of ridiculous. I mean, Chris Henry Jr. and Caden Dixon Wyatt in one class, that's number 1 and number 2 in the nation. Like, that's not really, you can try to debate that if you want. You can look at recruiting sites if you want. Go watch the film. And if that doesn't convince you, just wait and see, because we always talk about what Brian Hartline is doing with this wide receiver room. And I'm not really sure words can describe it. Like, what he is doing right now, the kids he is recruiting, the kids he's getting to come in, and they know they're going to have to battle other 5 stars. It's kind of wild, and it speaks to the pedigree that Brian Hartline is building at Ohio State. Switching to the offensive coordinator, I mean, that just took it up another notch, man. Talking to these receivers, that's what they say. That just adds to it. There's another reason to commit to Ohio State. So if Brian Hartline's zoned in on this dude, and I have a very strong feeling he's going to zone in on this dude, he's the type of receiver Brian Hartline goes after. And when Brian Hartline goes after a receiver like this, and if they're the type of player that Ohio State wants to recruit, meaning they know, right, if they put their head down, they don't pay attention to the outside noise, they're about their business, they got the right support group around them, they're going to go to Ohio State. If you're a wide receiver, you get the offer and you don't at this point in time, I think it's fair to kind of question, what are your motives at this point in time? You know what I mean? But, the room is very full, and he's just going to keep piling these guys up. And you think about the competitiveness that's going to go on in practice. It's going to make 5 stars, 6 stars at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that this is a kid that is going to be really fun to watch. And again, I interviewed Caden Dixon Wyatt last night, and he talked at length though. If you guys have not watched the interview, I know it was very late. It was 11 p.m. Eastern, so I was drinking some coffee to stay up and ready to go for Caden, because he got done with his practice and all of his workouts. He was settled in at 8 o'clock Pacific, but great interview, great kid. I think you guys are gonna be excited about it. But the thing about Caden is like, he's, these kids with this culture of Zone 6 and the room that, Zach Smith started it. Brian Hartline has continued it. These kids know that it's not about instant gratification. It's not about playing immediately. It's about learning the position, developing, getting better. And when it's their time, it's their time. Like Brandon Ennis is a perfect example where, he'd have started at probably 100 schools last year, but he was the fourth guy, didn't play as much, and now he's going to be our starting slot this year next to JJ and Carnell. We're going to have 3 SFE guys out there. And he's done nothing but work. He's in great shape. It's going to be an absolute war to get targets this year because Max Clare is coming on in a major way. And so that's going to be something that we're going to talk about on BuckeyeScoop.com. We have a nugget that'll be coming out tomorrow about that. But I think that when you look at, the proliferation of Zone 6 with Brian Hartline is like, hey guys, like, look, you can go other places and they might pay you more money. You might play earlier. You might have better numbers as a freshman. But if you come here and you put in work, you do the right thing, you're going to be a first round pick. So again, he's done it time and time again. And these kids, when they get to the league, they're productive. That's the other, part of it is, are you getting ready for the National Football League? Because obviously you want to dominate in college. You want to put up the numbers. You want to win national championships. You want to beat Michigan. You want to do all the stuff that obviously is important as you're going through the, your career at Ohio State. But the second part of that is, once you get to the NFL, are you ready to go? Because there's a lot of guys that they get there and they're not technically advanced enough to play early. And you watch Garrett Wilson, Rookie of the Year. You watch Olave, even JMO, who was here for a couple years before he went to Bama for the 1 year. You look at Marvin, you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba made the Pro Bowl. These guys, not only do they get to the league, but they're ready to be high-level contributors, Rookie of the Year candidates, high fantasy football draft picks, like whatever you want to do. So I think it's exciting. Like I said, I love what's going on with Brian. Brian has done an incredible job. And I think that we're going to throw the crap out of the ball this year. With Brian calling the plays is going to be, how can I make more receivers when I come to Ohio State? We're going to be chucking that thing all over the yard. Devin, as we get into recruiting, there's been some interesting commitments and flips, and you've really been developing some relationships with a lot of these kids. You've had some really great interviews. Talk a little bit about some of the surprise commitments and some of the intel that you've been gathering, because it's funny, you got better intel than most of the quote unquote recruiting experts. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, man, real fast before I get into that, speaking of Buckeye receivers in the NFL, I don't know if anybody's seen an updated picture of Marvin Harrison Jr. and he looks like right now, but he looks like an absolute animal. But yeah, in terms of Ohio State recruiting right now and like the intel per se that Buckeye boys are gathering, it comes directly from these players and their families. And when you look at the recruiting industry, I mean, the truth is, I mean, they're directed strictly towards clicks and wanting to get attention and different things like that. So they're going to say and do whatever. They're going to direct an interview in a certain area. But, even at this, recruiting has changed, man. So we can even talk to these recruits. And I know that Ohio State is even in on some guys and has some close relationships with some guys that we're not even aware of yet. I mean, Jameer Perez commits to Florida. Everybody freaks out. That recruitment is not over, so everybody cannot freak out there. Everybody's freaking out about D-line recruiting right now. Matt Patricia just offered the #1 defensive tackle in the nation out of Louisiana, Lamar Brown. I'm actually going to be interviewing him directly after this over on the Buckeye Boys channel. You got players like Felix Ojo that the entire Buckeye coaching staff has been building a relationship with. Players like Braylon Womack, that Ohio State has just done a phenomenal job. And you got to give credit to Ryan Day with what he is doing and how he is focused, on recruiting, specifically on the offensive line. I mean, to go from last year, that being the #1 thing that, everybody was talking about, with them worried about the on-field play, but not that, the recruiting. I mean, rightfully so, rightfully so in the moment. Everything pointed towards we should be worried about it, but we got shoved in a locker by Coach Fry. He kind of proved us wrong there. But this year with Ryan Day getting all of these offensive line coaches in and doing that. Tyler Atkinson, the Buckeyes have an actual chance there. Xavier Griffin, the other linebacker out of Georgia, in there, Sincere Johnson. I mean, the amount of 5-star big time players that Ohio State is legit in on right now is absolutely insane. And I love the way that the Buckeyes are in on these recruits. They're not throwing money at them, and that's not why Ohio State is getting on their list. Ohio State is getting on their list because of the production that they put on the football field. They go tell Braylon Womack, hey, you come here, you're going to get developed and you're going to get drafted in the NFL and you're going to win football games. They told him that a year ago. Well, what did they do? They went out and they won a national title in Caleb Downs. And you see what Caleb Downs is doing. He's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So, I just love the way that the Buckeyes are recruiting right now. And even on the defensive line, with all the freaking out that we want to do, I said it on my show the other night. The trial is not over yet. The test is not over. We can't judge anything yet with, it's halfway done. So there's some big time defensive ends, some big time defensive tackles taking official visits to Ohio State. And the product that Ohio State puts on and off the field is the best in the nation. And that's not really a debate right now. Everybody can say Homer, Homer, Homer all you want, but academics, there's no speeding tickets going on. We just won a national title. You see what we do in the transfer portal. We get the number 1 tight end. You got players that go in the transfer portal and reach out to Ohio State. It's just everything going on around this program right now. It bleeds momentum and success on and off the field. So I'm excited. I always am excited about our recruiting classes, but in particular this year, just the amount of players that we are in on that are really high up on this list, I think would surprise a lot of people. I don't even think that everybody knows all the players that we're actually in on, building relationships on. So I'm excited to see the end result here. I really am. I think things are going to change. We're used to Ohio State, being the, how would you say it, the flippy on signing day. I'm really excited to see what happens this year on signing day because I would put some money on that doesn't happen this year. I could see Ohio State getting a couple flips at the end.
Yeah, I think that you look at it's just a different animal now. Like this is the cleanest it's been for Ohio State in terms of recruiting because Nick Saban's gone. Dabo Sweeney, his star is crestfallen. Kirby Smart in Georgia, they're a little bit down right now. So, the juggernauts that we had to go get. I don't think Steve Sarkisian, in Texas is going to war chest and they've got money, but I don't think that they're particularly compelling compared to some of these other schools. But, Ohio State leading, you don't want to pay top dollar for mediocre talent. And that's what happens sometimes, like with the transfer portal, when people want us to pay for a defensive tackle that's maybe not that great just to have it. I was like, I don't know if he's better than who we have, but we've capitalized on the fact that we are the premier program. Again, when you win the national championship, there's no question about it. But then you have the most draft picks. You have the highest APR. Like I said, Ryan Day's got a 7-year extension. You tie all those together, and and the culture is great. Again, like I talked at length to Grace Dixon, who I know you love, Caden Dixon Wyatt's mom, and she's like, it reminds me of Mater Day. It's like Mater Day. Like in Mater Day is the best high school program in the country at this point. They've got Chris Henry Jr., they've got Caden Dixon Wyatt, they've got a superstar tight end that we're going after hard. I don't know if we'll be able to land him, but he's a freak. He's a Brock Bowers type tight end. So, but they conduct themselves a certain way, and so does Ohio State, and that's a compliment to Jim Tressel, to Urban Meyer, to Ryan Day, because we've always consistently had a clean culture. Like we don't, we always had kind of the thing where you recruit your own problems. So if you want to go take a kid who's questionable and a little crazy and the family's crazy, then it's like you're throwing a grenade in the middle of your living room and you're like, oh man, I didn't think that was going to blow up after you pull the pin off. So we've never had to take a ton of bad kids. If a kid's a superstar, maybe, but our superstars are the best kids we have. Like Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith are two kids you like set your watch to, that they're going to do the right things. They're going to be great examples, great role models. And that's what I like. And you know what? The thing that's been great about with what Mark Pantoni's done and Ryan Day's done is those guys have gotten rewarded very handsomely with their NIL retention deals. They've signed huge deals, and again, that's great. And it hasn't changed them. Like, that's the most important thing, is like when some of these kids, you hand these guys an NIL check, man, are they still going to go hard? Guys like Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, they go even harder. You give them a check and they're just like, oh, I want to go get the big money in the league, and I want to go on another natty, and I want to be a first team All-American. And, and so there's some guys, they get that check and it's they're kaput. Again, trust me, I've seen it. I've lived it as a player, as a coach. There are some guys that show up to Ohio State, man, and they think it's like a coronation. And, it's even worse now with the NIL. If you give a kid a check and he shows up and he's out of shape, lazy, doesn't put in work, and you're kind of stuck with him, then it's a disaster. Devin, we've talked a lot about the D-line recruiting, because that's, every offseason there is something that people have to hyperventilate about and go crazy about. So I had to do this just because, I was thinking about it. I was like, I'm going to throw this on. So, here's some Jason Moore tape. Now, this is expired because this is his high school tape. And, this is a guy that's converting from defensive end to defensive tackle. So that takes some time and some little different stuff. But you watch his tape, man, and in high school, this guy looks like, he looks like a Pro Bowl NFL defensive end in the making. But he is that tweener. He's kind of like Edric Houston, where he's so big that you're like, will he be better suited to be a super athletic defensive tackle as opposed to being, kind of like a heavier, maybe potentially slower end? Now, this is not great competition. This is his area is not. This is not Matter Day versus some of the big time California schools or Georgia schools or Florida, Texas type schools. But this is a kid that I still have hope for. He hasn't done much. He's had injuries, hasn't produced, but we take these kids for a reason. And again, when Ryan Day, and I said this a million times, when Ryan Day is calling out your position group, specifically defensive tackles, in press conferences after the spring game and the post-mortem press conference that he had, guys like Larry Johnson and Mickey Marotti and, frankly, Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, the leaders of the team, they got to turn the heat up, because at this time last year, all I heard about, and I heard this from people that are really smart, not just, people that are, on the fringe. I'm talking about people that are really smart. They were like, oh man, I hope this offensive line doesn't blow this year with the skill that we have with Emeka and JJ and Carnell and Will Howard and Trey Henderson and Quinton. Oh, I hope the O-line doesn't blow it. And you know what? The O-line did well. And that was despite taking 2 direct hits to the battleship, losing Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin in season. You lose a first-team All-American, first-round pick left tackle, and the Remington winner. Most offensive lines would sink to the bottom of the ocean like the Titanic. But ours actually got better somehow, which, again, magnificent work by Chip Kelly, Justin Fry, Ryan Day, Will Howard, Luke Montgomery, all the guys, Donnie Jackson, legendary stretch down the line. So what do you make of this? Because again, I haven't given up hope, but I do think that there's a portion of folks that are just like, I just want to take somebody because anybody is better than who we have. But I just don't know if it's true or not. And again, this is the kid that I hope that we can somehow drum up and get to show up in season. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, a couple things, man. I mean, obviously, right now, with what Ryan Day said in the press conference, talking about they need some guys to step up, at the D tackle position. He did not say, I don't think the guys can step up at the 2 deep at D tackle. I think everybody took that in the worst case scenario. So there's like one piece of evidence, right? Then you have your film from last year, the fact that, you can watch Tywan Malone play a little bit. You can judge him off that. You can judge Jason Moore off that. And then you got the spring game. A lot of people are using the spring game as, hey, man, did you not see our D tackles in the spring game? They were getting shoved around or whatever. Like, I've heard a couple different people say that. And I don't know, man. From what I've gathered from spring games is, last year it was the offensive line. Right after the spring game, everybody started freaking out about that. And it turns out the offensive line turned out okay. Now, I'm not saying right? Obviously, if the head coach is saying, hey, we need the guys to step up, everybody keeps bringing up how many times he brought that up. Well, when a head coach is asked about it, he's going to talk about it, right? So he didn't bring these up on his own. It's because, right, some of the media started creating this thing about, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? When in fact, it was the defensive ends that Ohio State went after the hardest in the portal and got, right? But they were pressing this defensive tackle thing, and they're always pressing something with Larry Johnson, right? But I know there are some things there and some evidence there that points towards, hey man, what's going on in recruiting? What's going on with this and that? Did Jack and JT live up to their potential? I know you have all that stuff, but to that, I would say you as a player, a couple different things here. There's a lot of things left to happen here before the season starts. A lot of training. They're back in the weight room now. They started lifting weights. So, they've got some time to potentially change their game, right? And a lot of people are just kind of, casting Tywan Malone, Jason Moore, and Will Smith Jr. out. They're just kind of like saying, hey, oh my gosh, we didn't get somebody out of the portal, kind of saying these guys weren't able to get the job done. My question to you is, okay, let's say a couple months ago, they weren't able to get the job done. My question to you would be, with the time that's remaining and the training they're about to go through with Mick and everything that's built up, out of those three players alone, I mean, is there a chance that one of those three players can step it up this offseason? I mean, you're seeing K-Mac. I don't know if you saw the video on Twitter of K-Mac went from 325 to 295. He looks like he's moving way better, right? So there's an example of a player that has changed and I believe is going to play differently this year. So, I mean, is it fair to just cast these our two deep defensive tackles out and act like they're not going to do anything or they're not going to be good enough when they have the opportunity to get better, even with the season being so close? Is there a chance that they step up? Do they have enough time to step up and be these dudes? And have you seen defensive tackles do nothing for 3 years in the program and then in their fourth year show up and show out?
Well, I mean, I think that there are positions that they just take longer, like offensive and defensive line, where it relies on your strength and your awareness, but mostly your strength. Like, it takes time to get big and strong to play in the Big Ten. So again, receiver guys can play right away. Running back guys can play right away. If you're a freak of nature pass rusher, maybe you can play on the edge right away. Playing interior defensive line as a true freshman in the Big Ten and being, again, it's not playing, it's dominating, it's performing, it's playing because you got to play at an all Big Ten level. It's not just show up and try to feel it out and hope it goes okay. It's like, you got to go and play. And again, there's some true freshmen that go play, like Caden Proctor played at Bama a few years ago at left tackle. He's terrible, heavy, slow foot. They didn't have anybody else to play. So again, that's, if you're a true freshman out there, then that means that we've missed in recruiting the last 2 or 3 years, or we've had a lot of guys leave and go to the NFL or go to the transfer portal. But I think that, a classic example, and I was talking about this with you in pre-shows, like Luke Montgomery is a kid that I think if you ask the fan base, after the Michigan game about Luke Montgomery, who, was a kid that had been around for a couple years, and he did the Bison package where he would be the extra blocker. He'd be in a 96 number or 92 number, 91, whatever. And they put him in at tight end and did a little bit of work and wasn't particularly great at that. I remember, he got his block knocked off against Penn State pretty good when he went down there and got clocked. But, he's a guy that I think most of the fan base would have been having questions about because he'd been beaten out 2 years in a row. He's a kid that was really heralded. And then, all of a sudden he gets in, Seth McLaughlin gets hurt. There's an injury. They put him in at left guard where he'd been repping. Interesting. I think Zen might've gotten hurt in the end of the Indiana game or whatever. And then all of a sudden they say he's going to play against Tennessee. And I was like, and again, I root for the kid, but Tennessee's defensive line was 10 deep, really good. First round pick defensive end, a bunch of really good players on that team. And Luke goes out there and kills it. Does great. I mean, he does incredible. And that was the guy that didn't play the entire season. And he starts playing against Tennessee, and he had that really nice pancake block on the long run. And then as the championship run went on, he became the starting left guard, and he played really well. And he got better. And so that's an example of a guy that, I think that most people might have had some questions about coming down the stretch. And he's a big guy. And I know it's not defensive tackle, but it's an interior line position where it's not all about speed and edge and being a true freshman speed demon pass rusher. It's about brute force and power and figuring it out. And I think that, there's guys like Will Smith Jr. who I've got a lot of hope for. Again, we got to figure out who can man the nose. And again, that's something that with Larry, he likes smaller nose guards, which is normally when you think nose guard, you think Vince Wilfork, Ted Washington, 350-pound guys. And we've had like Mike Hall, who's, 270 pounds. And we've had BB Landers, who's 270 pounds. And we've had lighter guys that can kind of disorient and upset the center. Again, he likes to jump the snap hand. I love watching what they do with the nose because it makes sense to what he likes to do. Split the gap, get upfield, disrupt the the running game, be a force as a pass rusher. Most of the nose guards aren't pass rushers, so it was always interesting when we would play Mike Hall and Ty Leak together, and you'd have Ty Leak as the 3 technique when he's 350 pounds, and you'd have Mike Hall as a 280-pound nose guard. But Larry likes to switch it up because it's just a difference thing. So again, I think Will Smith Jr., again, his old man, I played with his old man, Will Smith Sr., who's a first-round pick, and blocked him every day in practice. Really, really one of the greatest players in Ohio State history. So I think that he's got that kind of king blood in him where it's got to pop out and he's got to play. And, again, this is our backup defensive tackles. That is the biggest source of consternation in the entire universe. And so I challenge you, Buckeye Nation, who were our backup defensive tackles in 2002 when we won the national championship? Probably don't know. Who are our backup defensive tackles in 2014? Probably don't know. I mean, hell, you probably don't even know who our backup. I mean, you do now because they're starting this year, but in general, like, do they have some incredible role? Now, if there's an injury, then all the bets are off. But otherwise, it's like, I mean, there's years where we don't have a quarterback and I'm terrified. And there's years where, not recently, but years when I played where I wasn't sure who our quarterback was going to be or if we're going to play the right guy. You go back to the early 2000s and we're starting Austin Mockerman and Steve Bellisari and whatever. And I'm not knocking those guys, but that's a whole different animal. And there's people that are worried about Julian Sand. Julian Sand's a 5-star kid that won the Elite 11. And I mean, he's got every attribute you could ever want. I mean, people wish he was taller, but he can throw the crap out of the ball. And again, that's from talking to people that really know. That's not because I like Julian Sand or I know Julian Sand. I talk to people that know what good quarterbacking looks like, and they like what they see in Julian Sand, including the workout in California where he looked really, really good. And he was leading the guys and running them through drills. And he's got great chemistry with JJ, which is about all that matters to me. Does JJ like him? If he does, then I don't have to catch those passes, but JJ does. What else, Devin? Because again, I know that people are always going to complain about something. Even if we win the national title and we have the most draft picks and we've got Ryan Day with a 7-year extension, there's got to be something that is like the like the rock in everyone's shoe, which is backup defensive tackles, which is amazing. But what else, Dev?
Yeah. So just one more thing on the D tackles real fast and this Larry Johnson thing that's going around. I also hear a lot of people say, hey, do you think that Larry got the most out of Jack and JT? Right? You talk about a 2nd-round draft pick and a 4th or 5th-round draft pick. And most people would argue Jack got drafted way too low, right? So a lot of people are somehow using that as evidence, right, that Larry is somehow slipping. A 2nd-round defensive end, and then Jack, who I think everybody would agree got drafted entirely too low. Well, to that I would say, what about the opposite end of that of Ty Leak and Ty Hamilton? Ty Leak was a 1st-round draft pick. Does anybody know what he was rated nationally? He was a 300 and some ranked player nationally. What about Ty Hamilton, a defensive tackle that got drafted in the 5th round? Does anybody know what he was ranked nationally? He wasn't. 247 didn't even have him ranked nationally. That's how low he was on the thing. So, you're going to pay attention to all these negative things. They're there. If you dig deep enough, you're going to find these negative things. And I'm not saying that I am right and you are wrong. If you are one of those that thinks that we are going to struggle with our depth at defensive tackle, you could very well be correct. You could be right. But I could also be right in saying that I believe in our coaches and I believe in these players, that these guys have the time to step up and do what's necessary. But Kirk, the last thing that I'll say I find so funny, and shout out Funky Buck, brought this up on the Scoop board. Go over there, man. A lot of good stuff all the time. Um, is the fact that like Dylan Raiola and DJ Lagway are getting all this talk. They're on all these lists of top 10, top 20 returning quarterbacks for this upcoming year. And yet, the number one quarterback in that recruiting class, Julian Sayin, all that's talked about is he going to be able to handle the pressure? Is he going to be able to handle a hit? If he gets hit, he's too small. I just find that so funny, man, right? Like Julian Sayin was ranked above both of these guys who played okay last year, but also had some games where they played really, really bad, like looked horrible. But yet they're on like top 10 returning quarterbacks in the nation. And now, do I think that DJ and Dylan are very good quarterbacks? Yes. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that, hey, man, let's get a little more confidence in Julian Sayin here because we saw what he was ranked. He was ranked above the two quarterbacks that are being frequently put in top 10 returning quarterbacks in the nation. So that's another one. I'm going to have faith in, like you said, the people that know what they're watching, that know what they're doing. And if Ryan Day is going to pick Julian Sayin as the starting quarterback and get rid of everybody else in that room essentially and let them go to the transfer portal, then I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to believe that Julian Sayin is about to be a rock star this year with a couple games of, growing pains, of course, but with what he's got around him, man, that's insane. I think he's going to have a great year.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'll have better statistical years than either of those guys, just because when you've got the best tight end in the country and you've got the number one receiver in the country, probably the best player in the country as your ex receiver, and then you've got Carnose at the first round pick. I mean, you don't have to be Godzilla out there. You got James Peoples, who I think is going to be, I think James Peoples will be the biggest revelation of this team because I think he's going to be really good. I mean, he's a monster. He's a bull. He's really, really good physically in terms of his speed. He's gotten kind of the bulk to carry the load. So Julian Sayin doesn't have to be Superman. And that's the thing that I think people just don't understand is like, I don't need him to go out there and win the game. He's got to go out there and move the chains and keep the downs at 3rd and 3 and convert and score the touchdowns and throw it to JJ. Like, and again, Will Howard was magnificent at that, but I love the position that we're in right now. And again, I know people worry about defensive tackle depth, but in the era of the transfer portal, you need to shift your mindset. If you really want to, if you're willing to become progressive and become great about knowing yourself when you talk about college football, because depth is an illusion now, especially for big bodies, offensive tackles, defensive tackles. Because, if a guy's a backup, like Hero Canoe, people were like upset Hero Canoe left, and Hero's a nice kid. He's not a very good player. Again, I've watched his tape. And again, if he played at Ohio State, I'd say he's not a very good player. And I'm not being a hater. I'm just saying I've watched him on tape. I thought he'd be better than he is. If he wants to leave and go to Texas, despite the potential being our number 3 defensive tackle, and he wants to open with us and whatever else, then he can have at it. And Texas took like 7 defensive tackles in the portal, 5 or some crazy number, which again, at some point, I think that when you take that many kids, you have to have buyer's remorse. Like you're probably like, oh, we took this kid, but this kid's a little bit better. So let's take him and let's pay him all or whatever. And again, whatever. But I think that you got to let these young guys play. And here's the other thing. And this is something that it just kind of jarred in my mind over the last few years. There were years in the past, in the recent 2-year-ish span, where I was really miserable about Larry Johnson's defensive line rotations. Because again, we're very fair in the show. And there would be games where we would be playing Jerron Cage, a couple of these guys that I didn't think were good. They're not NFL players. They didn't last in the NFL 5 minutes. And Ty Leak would play like 10 plays and he'd be typing free leak and free 91. And then Mike Hall would play like 8 plays or 10 plays. So again, those were the backup defensive tackles. And that's how many reps they're playing. They're playing like 15 plays, 12 snaps, whatever. And they were, that you're talking about a 1st and a 2nd round pick. We're sitting behind, Jerron Cage, who was an undrafted guy that never sniffed the NFL. And there were a couple guys that were like that were nice kids, nice pluggers, Vincent, Teron Vincent, some of these guys that were, again, nice. But Teron Vincent was a 5-star defensive tackle, never amounted to anything, didn't play in the league at all. And those guys, Teron Vincent and Jerron Cage, started over Tyleek and Mike Hall. Now, again, sometimes, I don't know if those guys were doing the right stuff off the field or if they were in the doghouse from LJ or what it was. But, Tyleek's got more talent in his big toe than those two guys have combined. And Mike Hall's not far behind. Mike Hall's going to have a huge year with the Browns. Tyleek obviously is going to start for the Lions, the first-round pick. So, again, it just kind of shows how little the backup D tackles play, because Tyleek would get in and be very impactful and barely play. And Mike Hall, kind of the same way. So, but what else, Dev? We got you for a little bit longer. We can wrap this thing up. This is a fast 45 minutes. Good Lord. What else? What else you got to wrap this thing up, my dude?
Man, the Buckeyes to 2026 class. Everybody, the biggest question mark minus defensive line is quarterback, right? There's one kind of coming into focus, the 335th ranked player in the nation, the number 23 ranked quarterback. And you never guess it, another Cali quarterback, man. This would be the third one in like 4 classes or whatever. Luke Fohe. Taking a visit to Ohio State June 20th through the 22nd. Ohio State has told him, hey, we want to see you come here. We want you to come here. We want to see a few things from you, and we'll see if he gets the offer then. 6'1", 195 pounds, not going to – when you're getting sandwiched between, Julian Tavian St. Clair and Brady Edmonds, I'm not bashing the kid, but we know the kind of quarterback – right, that Ohio State is most likely to get right now, right? So they're looking at him, and we'll see what happens there. There's been debate on whether they're going to take 2 in 2027 to kind of make up for that. They're getting some more offers out in the 27 class as well. But we've kind of got it narrowed down now to Luke. We'll see if he gets the offer and see what happens there. But the momentum at Ohio State, I don't complain much about Ohio State because I just don't see much to complain about. If I want to dig hard enough, I can find it. Plenty of people do. That's just because there's nothing else much to talk about. So let's I can't wait for this time next year. If Larry Johnson decides to keep coaching, I promise you there's going to be a new issue with Larry. So that's all I got.
I mean, with Larry and the issues and with everything else, it's like, you got to understand, and I've said this a million times, you guys are probably tired of it, but how many of you guys are going to walk away from a job where you're making $1.4 million a year? But that's not to say, and you just got a raise, and you have bonuses that could take you to $2 million. On top of the fact that your son works with you, and your son is making $200,000 a year to be the assistant running backs coach. So again, like, you want to talk about like living the dream as a proud dad, like having a job that's paid you like last year is the most money he's ever made in his life. And again, I'm sure Larry's been good with his money. I don't really care what he does, but I mean, that's a lot of scratch. So $100,000 a month, 120 a month or whatever it is, plus bonuses. And you got to remember, like last year when they won all those playoff games and they get the championship, I mean, he probably got, $500,000 in bonuses. So he probably made it damn near $2 million. So it's like, you're going to walk from that, and your son works with you every day, and he's learning the profession, and he's climbing the ladder, and he's making $200,000 as an assistant running backs coach. So, again, people are like, oh, Larry should retire. I was like, I'm not retiring. They can fire me and pay me out if they don't want me. But again, when you do that, all of a sudden, these kids that came to play for Larry Johnson, like Edric Houston, could be at risk. So for everybody that wants to walk into Woody Hayes and shoot Larry in the back of the head and get a new guy in there, like he's old Yeller, like, dude, like, let's be real. Kids are connected to him. And people that say that Jack Sawyer and JT didn't have great careers, again, was it scheme? Was it whatever? I mean, was Jack not Joey Bosa? I don't know. Let's let the NFL thing play out, because Mike Vrabel was a late, it was a 5th, 6th round pick, and he ended up okay in the NFL. And Jack was a 4th round pick in the Steelers. I think Jack in that scheme is going to be tremendous. I think JT Tuimoloau with the Colts is going to be tremendous. Obviously Tyleek went 1st round. A guy like Ty Hamilton will play 10 years in the league, barring an injury. He's the kind of guy that'll stick in the league forever, do his job. His brother signed a huge extension, $50 million with the Jacksonville Jaguars, kind of the same guy. So I don't know, man. It's like it's hard. Larry is the guy, but again, I would do the same thing, and I think that that's what they're doing. Is that they've got Tony Washington Jr., who's kind of like the assistant D line coach and edge coach or whatever you want to call it, and they brought these guys back to kind of fill in the same way with the offensive line, where you've got Tyler Bowen, who hadn't coached the line much in the last 7 years. He's coached the line for like 1 year out of the last 7 of his coaching career. So you bring in Marcus Johnson from Purdue, and you bring in Charlie Dickey from Oklahoma State. So you have 3 O-line coaches that all recruit. So you can cast that net real wide when you've got triple the guys doing the work. So again, I don't know. Like there's a lot of things I can worry about in life, you know, like anacondas and scorpions and tarantulas and stuff. But like, I'm not worried about like Larry Johnson's backup defensive tackles, because if we don't have enough guys to play defensive tackle, then guess what? We're going to run a sub package, and we're going to bring in Arvell Reese will play defensive end, and we'll shift guys down. And Matt Patricia is the master of making sure that he gets the best 11 guys on the field, shifting things around and making it work. Because again, he played in the NFL where you got a 53-man roster plus a 10-man practice squad. So if you lose your big defensive tackle, then guess what? You might be running more nickel, more sub, more 3-down stuff. You have more Walker. I mean, there's ways to do it, especially in the spread offense era where there's RPOs and you need nickels that can cover, and you need more athletes on the field to cover the slot receivers, the athletic tight ends. Like, you know, you can mix it up. And again, I don't mind having 3-down guys and having an edge guy that stands up a lot, because that's something that Georgia does, and a lot of these teams are going to, because you need to be smaller and more athletic in modern college football. And I think that that's something that we're going to be in space this year. All right, Devin, let's wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts?
I'm good, man. Excited, man. Always excited for Buckeye football. Can't wait for it to start and get to a couple of these games this season, man. What Ryan Day's doing, it's phenomenal, man. Appreciate everybody in the chat that showed up, man. You guys are great. We're about to interview Lamar Brown over on the Buckeye Boys channel. Go check us out over there, man. We appreciate you guys.
And make sure you spell it Buckeye Boyz, Buckeye Boys with a Z, so that you guys find it. Devin's about to head over there and run the show. Real quick, last call. I don't want to hear about it, because I always do when I shut the store off. The championship gear is in stock. The Urban Meyer is the hottest selling. The Urban Meyer pullover is the hottest thing we've ever had. It's in stock. It's been impossible to get white Nike pullovers, but we got them. The blacked out hat, my favorite ever. I'm going to be rocking that like crazy. Scoop had it first with the American flag. Classic. Ordered that. I love the national championship gear. I'm going to be rocking this pretty much every day. I mean, you gotta wear this while you can. Great for vacation. Great for wherever you can go. And we got the blackout gear. I got a bunch of the shirts. Got the tank top for Kim. Great stuff for Father's Day. It's coming up. You guys have no idea what to get your whoever you're getting for Father's Day. Get the blackout hoodie. Carhartt, excellent. And the traditional Buckeye Scoop hoodie. So I appreciate you guys so much. Let's wrap this thing up. Again, as always, thank you guys for all that you guys do, making this show what it is. Again, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also, click that little alert bell. Another huge show tonight. Nevada is back tomorrow. We got a huge Michigan update coming tomorrow, so you guys get ready to get cranked up for that. It's going to be a good one. Cannot wait to get him back in the saddle and get us ready to go. If you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also, click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys so much for supporting this channel, growing this channel. Grab your friends' phones and have them subscribe to the podcast on Apple. I've had people do that. They say, "Oh, I have, my father-in-law Tony Telesmanic, who I love to death. He got a hip surgery. He's feeling great. He's on the mend." And he was doing a little bit of his PT, and he told the doctor, who was an Ohio State fan down in Fort Myers, Florida, "Hey, subscribe to my son-in-law's show." And that meant the world to me. And he did. And he'd actually watched the show. So that was a great story. Tony T, love you. And Connie, I hope you are feeling better, my man. But as always, I appreciate you guys so much. Give us a subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. And we will keep cranking this stuff along, because we work, baby. We love doing it. And I love talking to you guys each and every night. So with that being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. I hope you guys have a great night. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 7:10 with Nevadabuck, ready to rock and roll. You guys have a great night. And make sure you head over to Buckeye Boys, because they're about to start up on their channel. So go check them out. They're going to have a great interview. Their interviews have been killer. The best recruits in the country are coming on the Buckeye Boys podcast. So make sure you guys check out Devin and Mello and the boys. So hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Go Bucks.